can still cut this out if you want to.
Okay.
So yeah, that's much better because now it's like down there.
Yes.
All right.
Hello.
Hello. My name is Miles.
And I'm Tate.
Yes. And he's here to tell you about autism, and I'm here to ask questions. So, tell him a little bit about yourself.
Well, Miles asked me to take a moment and talk about what I've been up to for a career for the last 20, maybe 21, 22 years. And that has been to drive around Pinellas County, serving our great citizens here of all ages in the practice of applied behavior analysis, which is really scientific in its nature. So I'm a scientist at heart, and I'm curious as to why behavior occurs. And I get all kinds of scenarios throughout the course of my day, you know, multiplied over the years, and seen quite a lot of things. And at the same time, I'm always using the science and the principles that some men and women who have been working hard in research areas who have over the years been able to present a lot of really great information for us to be able to lead by that example. And then we go out and we apply it and implement it as it's needed the most.
Yeah. All right. So that's a little bit about him. Now it's on to the real questions. Though I'm just going to throw this one in because this one's kind of still a personal question. Okay. How many clients have you had over the years?
Well, I currently have 12 adults that I serve today, and this week I will have been in contact with them in a number of ways, either visited them where they are during the day or in a home or out in the community. And this population is in need of service because they are developmentally disabled and they receive services through the state of Florida. I have worked in that capacity for the duration of my career, maybe shy of 1 or 2 years when I started. I've also been able to offer services through another separate area, and that would be through either the services rendered for therapy through private insurance, if families have insurance coverage that accepts that, or if there's need and there's a way that services can be rendered through private funding. I've been available through that channel as well. So I've really tried to serve all three, populations of our general public. And gosh, if I were to throw a dart on a number over those number of years now, 20 plus, I would say I probably served maybe a little over 100 in my career.
Yeah, that's a lot of clients. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that one in there because I heard it. I assumed it was going to be a big number, so
yeah,
it's not disappointing.
I appreciate you asking. No one's ever asked me that, and I've never really had to think about that yet. Yeah. But and again, they've been as young as probably the youngest individual I served was 2. Probably 2.
I don't even know how they show symptoms at that point.
Yeah, well, behavioral challenges for sure. They might display aggression that might be disruptive and maybe a bit out of control, and the parents are looking for some help. And I've also served clients that have unfortunately passed away, or I should say fortunately, rest in peace. But so again, I've seen sort of the whole life cycle with this field.
All right. Now moving on to the actual real questions about autism.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any known causes of autism?
Well, a great question.
Yeah.
One has to look back a little bit on the history of the autism spectrum story. The year 2008 comes to mind as a really important year for not only the acknowledgement of autism on a national level, but then the overwhelming support and sort of need for services that followed shortly after that. It's kind of hard to say whether there were more kids being diagnosed with autism, from 2008 onward, 10 or so years later, or if we were just getting better at diagnosing it and there were always this number of young people living with this neuro developmental disorder would be the best way to define it. So there have been a number of suspicions as to what may create certain wiring in the brain and in the body at a very young age, maybe even prior to birth. That may sort of set the table for somebody's development. And there's been a lot of areas that have been focused on anything from a big movement to take a look at certain vaccines that were being given to babies throughout the last 15 to 20 years. That has been a big question. It's been a bit of a conspiracy. Some people believe that this was the cause, and there's been further since research that's come out that has contradicted that. So to try and stay scientific, stay objective, and stay within the science, I have to lean more towards, until there's more data to show empirically that that's the cause, then we have to continue to search for possibly other origins of how autism spectrum is created. There has been also other, looking at the mother's pregnancy. But at the end of the day, there could be some environmental variables that contribute to it. Yeah, it could be hereditary or contributing to it. So these are certainly some of the things that we have to account for.
All right, next question. Is there any known cure to autism that is publicly available?
Another great question. Going back to 2008, it seemed like a big springboard of services were made available to the population that was diagnosed with autistic or autism spectrum. The label or the class formerly was known as autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD, but that disorder, I believe, has been now since removed. Therapies and ways that children who are still within a developmental window especially can get those therapies in order to reteach or teach in a specific way are some of our best approaches at working with kids in order to teach skills that will integrate them socially and give them the communication skills they need in order to integrate socially, in order to live as typical a life as that might look. Some children and young people and adults with autism spectrum do take medications to help them. That is a medical case-by-case basis. So not everybody takes medication in that regard, but as you'll see, some autism crossovers are treated very well with medications, such as attention deficit disorder,
Yeah, ADHD.
ADHD and things like that. So to answer your question directly, there is no cure for autism in a medical sense, right? Not no taking a pill, and things are socially and in a communication sense all fine. Those things are really learned and earned, and over time one may move towards remission, I guess might be the best word to describe someone getting the help they need.
Yeah, okay. That was a good answer.
Thank
good
you.
question for good answer. Next question. All right. Are there any characteristics of autism that you know of?
When I've worked with people with autism, some of the things that I see in our interactions might be the limited amount of eye contact I might receive when I'm speaking to them. We tend to find that eye contact that we make and how much we make is a social grace, and someone who is unable to or very limited in their ability to make eye contact, if they're not looking at you, can tend to be limiting and from the standpoint of connecting with that person when you're speaking with them and in conversation. So it usually sticks out when someone doesn't look at you, and therefore one of the characteristics of someone who has autism spectrum is their inability to look at you in the eye and make eye contact for an extended period of time. Other behavioral characteristics that might be there could be things like not returning a smile or a facial expression.
Yeah.
Not having the ability to do that. And also not even responding to their own name when being called. These are just small indicators that there's somehow a disconnect between where they are or how they're interacting with the rest of the world, and then where the world is and how they're kind of trying to catch up and kind of get in there and see where they're at.
All right.
Those might be a few things.
Yeah, that's a good answer. All right, now moving on to, this is probably going to be a long question because it's got a long answer to it.
Okay.
But it's a short question.
Okay.
What is the spectrum?
What is the spectrum? Okay, well, we'll focus on the word spectrum right now because it's the operative word. It's the action word. And we went ahead and used the
I can pull it up on my
the resource. Miles is going to try to pull it up.
Yeah.
But we should look at a spectrum in sort of like a elongated area where we have two specific ends to it, and there's a measurement to it, almost like a scale. You could look at it in terms of developmental level. Some people that fall into the spectrum, when I refer to it side to side, the developmental level could be seen as the higher the developmental level of an individual lands on this spectrum may in fact show certain abilities that they might possess. Now, I've worked with young people that are very capable of a lot of things and can engage in a lot of skills, but yet they still have tendencies and characteristics that are indicating that they remain on the autism spectrum. They would be placed more on the higher end of the spectrum, if they indicate certain developmental challenges and IQ and those types of things that fall a little bit lower,
I'm gonna show you this idea.
then they would be placed sort of on the lower
end of this spectrum.
different end. And also the spectrum can be seen as autism being more towards the center, and you also have other similar type diagnoses that are similar to autism but aren't, say, exactly autism spectrum.
Yes.
And this could be attention deficits and even oppositional defiance.
Yeah.
So I've seen some kids that have those diagnoses as well, and of course if somebody is aggressive with their behavior, oppositional defiance is one of their diagnoses, then this is how we try to look at it to move forward. We're not necessarily looking at the autism spectrum as the primary challenge, but one of the traits that we have to account for when we build treatment.
Okay. Yeah, that was a good answer.
Thanks.
All right. Next question. Are there like different types of autism, like
Well,
severity or like type in general, like how they act?
yes, actually. So when you think about the character in Rain Man, the movie came out in 1988.
I'll show a picture of it right here.
The character played by Dustin Hoffman, Raymond Babbitt, was it Charlie Babbitt?
I think it's Raymond Babbitt.
I think
He's
Rain Man, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. He sort of fits into a class or a category of someone with autism spectrum that was more typical of what they would consider a savant. They would call them displaying certain
I'm gonna go with the cat and you finish.
okay, certain behaviors, certain traits that allowed them to stand out, primarily due to memory and and other functions. Not all people who are diagnosed autism spectrum are savants. So you have different types of people with autism.
Yes.
And again, as we talked about in the spectrum, you have different sort of levels of development, as well as a carryover of other diagnoses that aren't exactly autism spectrum, that are maybe similar to autism, like
Yes.
Asperger's, but Asperger's is sort of seen as a higher functioning form of autism. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes, like more of a closer to, like they're closer to non-autistic than like
Typical, yeah.
being like you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Closer to someone who is with autism spectrum than somebody who would be typical. Yeah, that'd be right.
All right, the next question, which actually kind of ties into Rain Man, it's a little bit of a fun question. Is it true that some autistic people have superpowers, like in Rain Man, where he could read the entire phone book and memorize it, and he could do all the math problems?
Well, your question is it true
Yeah.
that they have these superpowers? And
No.
yes, I think the best answer to that question is I've met some individuals who have been able to demonstrate certain abilities that, when I compare that to a lot of other people I know, I've certainly never met someone who is able to hear as well as the young woman I met a few years back downtown who was on the spectrum, and she displayed a few talents, including also seeing colors around people when she spoke to them, that there's research involving that. So do I think people with autism have some tremendously almost unexplained abilities? Yes, I do.
Yes.
And then again, some have tremendous memories, and
Like in right now.
right, and we know somebody familiar to us as well who's got a tremendous memory.
Of football games.
Yes.
He
So
can tell you any score of a football game.
any score of a football game.
From like anywhere from 1960 to like now.
About, yeah. So you could call that superhuman. I'd call that superhuman.
Yeah. Some games like Super Bowls, he can tell you the exact score, not just who won. All right. That wraps it up. But is there anything else you would like to say?
Well, just that I am very encouraged by being asked to interview with this today, and I'm very encouraged by all the wonderful instruction that Miles has gotten this year, and we
Thanks,
want
Miss
to
Kessler.
say thank you, and we hope you have a great summer.
Yes. All right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Let's do the walking thing. The cool thing. All right. Wrap.